Hello, welcome back to the Red Part. Today I'm going to talk about my recent experience at a GT. Welcome back. So this past weekend I went to the CAGBASH GT in Cincinnati, Ohio. Had an amazing time. It was my first GT event. Everything I've been to before has been a Road Trader. So this is my first big event, first 5-game event that I've been to. Had an absolutely amazing time. First of all, I'd just like to appreciate the team, Cincinnati Arsenal Gaming, CAG. They put on an amazing event. It was at the fairgrounds just outside Cincinnati. Amazing event, really beautiful tables, great terrain, used the Games Workshop terrain layout. So, they had a lot of setup work to do, a lot of prep work to do. It's really well organised. Everything, all the rounds started on time, pairings were timely. It was just an all-round great event. It was at the CincyCon, like a gaming convention. It was really good. Had a great time, like I said. So I just wanted to talk about it a bit, talk about my games. Anyone who's in the Discord or follows me on Instagram or anything knows my results. I went 1-4. I won 1 game, lost 4. But that's kind of the theme of this video, because even though I didn't place well, not my worst tournament result, but it's down there. I actually played some of the best games I've ever played at 40k. And I'm going to kind of dive into that a bit. This will probably be a bit of a longer video, 20-30 minutes I'm guessing, but I'm going to dive into that. I'm going to just do brief summaries of the games and then kind of dwell on it at the end a bit. But let me dive in a bit here. I'm going to give you some details. So there were 35 players registered. It's on the smaller end of a GT, but that happens. 3 did drop, so we started with 32 players showed up, so we kept the GT status. There were 2 drops after the first day. I think a couple of fellas had travelled in just for the single day, just to get like 3 games in, which is fine. It was, decent size. There was some pretty well-known folks, on the scene there. Quite some good team representation. A couple of guys from Death of Glory were there. A bunch of the fellas from Dayton that I regularly play against in the tournament scene there were there. It was a really good field. A lot of diversity in the lists as well. No AdMech, surprisingly, but there was a couple Drakari, 2 or 3 Death God, several Marines, a couple Sisters players, Tau. It was a good spread, a really good event, and I don't want to dwell on that too much. So some of the details I want to touch on. I did go first in all of my games, right? Every single game I managed to roll to go first. So it was kind of weird. I actually developed the list I ran, which I'll have on the screen on this side. I actually developed the list I ran to go second. I feel a bit safer now going second with the list as it stands. It does well going first, which we'll get into. So as I said, we use the the Games Workshop terrain layout, the 2 kind of overlays that they've provided for the US Open Series, and I absolutely loved playing on them. Only, I guess, I won't say a negative thing, because this was more or less unavoidable. Certainly this early into people reaching out and trying to use the GW version, because the terrain wasn't glued or fixed to the acrylic bases, it would get knocked a bit, and sometimes you'd have a bit of you're unsure if where the piece was supposed to be. Are you behind the true line of sight blocking or not? It did get a bit annoying at times, but the TOs talked it out with us before the game, or before the tournament started, explained what our expectations were, to make sure we agreed with it before the game, and it was supposed to be how it was. So it was nothing on them, just, it's one of those things. But I believe they are running another one in March. I would imagine they'll use the GW overlay again. So hopefully it'll be, that minor problem will be resolved by then. But I mean, the amount of work they put in to prepare it for us, I am not complaining in the least. So the first 3 missions used the Type 2, which is the one that has 2 terrain pieces in the middle of the board, and then the 2 games on day 2 used Type 1, which is kind of like it's got an open fire lane down the center, depending on the mission you're playing, right? So let me talk about my list first. So this was a bit of a deviation from the list I've actually been doing quite well with, apart from my previous tournament, or the one before CAGBASH. So I actually dropped one of the drills and brought in a Land Raider Achilles. And that's the biggest change. There's a squad of Chosen in there. They're just a backfield unit that's slightly better than Chaos Marines, as I pointed out in the last video I uploaded. But yeah, the Achilles was the big change. 2 Contemptors, Leviathan, pretty standard for me. Only 2 squads of Berserkers, 2 squads of 5 in the one drill. I dropped Khorne as well, which I don't regret. I thought I would, but I didn't regret it. 2 Lords, 1 with a jump pack, 1 on foot. So the play was basically Chosen and the Foot Lord go in the Achilles because it only has Transport 6. Hide behind Obscuring. The drill's in Deep Strike. The Lord can either go in Deep Strike or start on the board, and I actually started him on the board in every game, I believe. We've got the squad of 8 Warp Talons and a squad of 5 Raptors. There's some early board control, early aggression. The line of 30 cultists to sort of storm up and just claim the center, which I'm going to definitely touch on. But yeah, that was my list. Again, I'll have it on the screen for you. I enjoyed the list. It did better than I thought it would do, and this is regardless of the final results. It played better than I thought it would, because I didn't actually have any practice games with it at all, unfortunately, just because I've been changing my schedule at work every other day, it feels like. But I had 0 practice with it, so the last game I had was an RTT a month ago. But it really surprised me. So let me talk about my first game. So round 1 was Sweep and Clear. I'll try and have a image on the screen right now. I didn't get many photos during the day, unfortunately, but if I can find any, I'll throw them on as well. This was against Iron Hands, and I haven't played Iron Hands. Maybe at the very beginning of 9th, or if not, it would have been during 8th edition. So it's been a while now, going on 2 years. And obviously they are back to being pretty strong with the bodyguard deal, right? The list had a character Contemptor. Of course, you would. If you can do that, you're going to do it, especially in a competition, right? Opponent, great guy, Jonathan. We talked out, explained our list to each other, got going, and I was excited for this mission. I do love Sweep and Clear for a combat army, especially with a GW terrain. This is a great start. I was very confident going into this, and as soon as I run one first turn, and my Warp Talons were obviously frenzied, and he had put his Contemptor close to the front line, which, he had to do because that was the play. Have it bodyguarded, and it just swings out and just controls that central objective. Unfortunately for him, and I always provide my opponents with my list with my gotcha moments on there, and I'll explain how Apoplectic Frenzy works and stuff like that. I don't think maybe he didn't quite understand how aggressive those Warp Talons would be and how damaging they are, especially to Imperium units, with the 3 strats I always stack on them. So my Warp Talons get over there, dump 3 CP for the... I dumped 2 CP because didn't need the extra AP. So we had Vets the Long War and Exploding 5s for Death to the False Emperor. With all the attacks, the Contemptor survived with 1 wound. Hit back, it may have killed a Warp Talon, or I'm not sure. It had no claw or anything. It was a double Volkite missile launcher. So I had to spend another 3 CP to fight again, which was incredibly frustrating. I had to do it at that point. Maybe I didn't really have to. I could have just wrapped it, just spent 1 to consolidate all the way around. But I decided I needed it to die. So I did, and I killed it, and then I consolidated into the bodyguard and maybe lost 1 or 2 in the fight back. but I started very strong. I don't think there was any other shooting turn 1 because there's so much restriction with the buildings in the centre. But the amount of CP I had to spend turn 1 because I'd frenzied 2 units, the Warp Talons and the squad of cultists. I believe it was cultists, may have been raptors, I can't remember exactly. And then 2 CP to boost the Talons and then 3 to fight again. And I already spent 3 pre-game to bring my relic, Leviathan and Contemptors. That really hurt because then it was going to take me time to build up the CP to really have another good shot at anything. I generally don't do CP rerolls unless I absolutely feel I need to. But yeah, that was rough having to blow that extra 3 CP. So I did take Direct Assault, Engage and Rod, of course. I believe I don't have the score sheets because we actually had to hand in the physical copies, and I wasn't using the Battles app at the weekend. So it was a great game, great opponent, and it was a very close score. I lost 93 to 82, so only 11 points in it to play against Iron Hands with my list. I was very, very happy with that. There may have been a win in there for me. I don't believe I made any severe misplays. I don't remember. I think I may have forgot to do a rod or something, but that alone wouldn't have won me the game. I don't think I really did anything particularly wrong. My opponent, better player, and if we're honest, Iron Hands are a better army than World Eaters. It's the amount of stacks, buffs they can stack on top of each other. There's a disparity there, but the opponent was a better player, so no disrespect to him there. And the other thing I want to just briefly talk about is the amount of resilience that Iron Hands can get with their Feel No Pains and the other, like Transhuman and things like that they can throw. It makes it very tough to get through, but not as tough as Game 3, which I'll get to soon. So anyway, Game 2 was Vital Intelligence. This was against Wesley, was running Carcharodons, but as a Raven Guard successor, basically so he could bring Tyberos the Red Wake, who I've always thought is just a complete badass. It's basically a World Eater, just that follows the wrong god, I guess. But this was, like I said, on Vital Intelligence, using the same GW terrain, and I believe I took Engage and Rod. I think I took Assassinate. I can't be 100% sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't take the mission specific, and his list didn't really give much away, but 3 characters was probably the best I was going to do, so I'm pretty certain I took Assassinate. Anyway, so I lost this game 55 to 92, so this was a bit more of a blowout, but I still scored what I predicted I could score going into this. I built this list to be able to score sort of like 50 points pretty confidently by just having the primary presence and some sort of guaranteed secondary points, like even if it was just 8 points from Rod and so on and so forth, right? I wanted to make sure that I could kind of nail down being able to score this baseline, because when I can establish that, I can move up 10 points and make sure next tournament I'm scoring at least 60 points and so on. And then as I fine tune things, I get that up to 80 points. And once you hit that 80 point sort of guaranteed scoring range, then you're winning a lot more games than you're losing, I think. But anyway, that's besides the point. So the biggest thing in this mission which hurt was one of the central terrain pieces was basically a magic box. So it was a terrain piece, infantry could go inside, but it was covered and there was no line of sight into it. So he had a blob of 10 Terminators, and Tyberos gave them +1 strength. And being loyalist Terminators, they're automatically better than they were Red Butchers basically, but better. They were absolutely brutal. Lightning Claws and Storm Shields, I think there may have been a couple of Thunder Hammers in there, so much more resilient. And yeah, it was very difficult for me. Whenever anything got close there, he would just, he's already protecting 2 of the objectives there. And because of the way the mission works there, if you hold something in your command phase, then you hold it. He would kill me off before I could hold something in my next command phase, so I would no longer hold it. There's a weird interaction with how the you can walk off the missions there. Like, I could charge onto it, but if he killed me after that, then I didn't hold it. So his Terminator's holding down the central two, and then he could just use his, small arms and his flanking units to come out and pick me off one of the others, ensuring that I never really scored well on the primary. I scored, I want to say 25, maybe it was 20 on the primary, maybe it's 30, I don't know. But yeah, he had a really good army. It was really played well into my army, just being fighty but also resilient. Which was, I won't say surprising is the wrong word, but I believe he said he had only played a few games of Ninth, or was kind of, he wasn't new to Warhammer, but maybe it was a few games with the Raven Guard or the List or something. But like, he obviously had a tactical mind, had a good strategic mind, just was missing a few rules, like he kept forgetting about difficult ground and stuff like that. Not in a bad way, it wasn't to his advantage or anything, but like for someone who's I'm not going to say newer to the game, but very strong player, really good. So but that was a loss for me. Like I said, 92 to 55, so 37-point differential there, which isn't as bad. It's just I couldn't break him out the centre, and if you know Vital Intelligence, that's kind of critical to the game, unfortunately. So that was the second game. The third game, this one was awesome. It's probably the only game where I feel I made a genuine mistake, and I think it was probably my most fun game. I want to say just slightly. It was against Deathwing, a fella called Tim. Pure Deathwing army, oppressive. I haven't played Dark Angels ever, or certainly not in 9th edition, and I don't ever remember playing. I've only got one friend who plays them, and he's never brought them out against me. So, but obviously 9th edition Dark Angels, especially Deathwing's, a completely different beast. I've heard the stories, I've seen bat reps, but I haven't played against them, and oh my god, the stories are true. They are horrible. They do not die. But this game was so much fun. Me and my opponent just having a good laugh. It's the third game. We're tired. Basically it was a bunch, 30, 35 guys in a room sweating, and just, we all just wanted to get out there, get something to eat, something to drink. It was the end of the day, but we had a real good game. It was funny because obviously being a Deathwing player, he's used to his units just not dying. Again, I got first turn, and this is on battle lines, by the way. So there's 4 objectives, but they're in like a cross formation. And I took Engage Rod and the mission specific because I didn't think I could really score much off of his army, 2 characters maybe. Anyway, so I got first turn. The Warp Talons. Those Warp Talons. Yes. If you have problems against Dark Angels players, take Warp Talons. They love them. Absolutely love them. I killed an entire squad. So this is Apoplectic Frenzy, Charge, Death to the False Emperor, and the additional AP, because they ignore AP 1, so to get them back to their end vuln or close to it, you have to do that. And then they're transhuman all the time, so you don't need to even waste the CP on vets, because they're toughness 4 still, and your strength 4. You're re-rolling all your wounds, so you're getting 75% wounds, and the squad of 8 has 41 attacks. I'm Death to the False Emperor in on 5s. I don't know how many I actually got, how many hits I got. It was ludicrous. I did roll very well. Wiped a squad of 5 and took out 3 of the squad that he'd combat squadded off of, that happened to be next to it. It was absolutely beautiful. And as he picked up his models, like the look on his face, like I felt bad. You have those moments where everything just goes right, but it goes a bit too right, and like your opponent's like, oh wow, this sucks. And I think he was maybe a little bit tilted at that point, like he's like just hadn't seen that happen. Of course, I was still, even though it was a good result, I still knew I'm very much a glass cannon, and these Warp Talons are dead now. Bolt fire, the 50,000 Storm Bolters are going to just remove them off the table. I knew they were gone, but I traded well. But I think he kind of like, even though it shook him, like, it made him more resolute, which may have been a mistake on my part. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, because he dug his heels in, and man, he come back. And you know what, following just before that, my Volkite Contemptors had taken 3 or 4 from a squad, which was, you know, a bit uncanny as well. He rolled really bad on his saves, and I think I got like 7 mortals off of one of the Contemptors. The first round was just absurd dice for me. I definitely should have probably killed 5 Terminators overall, but killing 13 of them, you know what, I'll take it. So he came back and he played very well. He, like, where he had 1 or 2 models like left over, he'd just pull them out and hide them, because he had while we stand or whatever it is on some of the squads, so I was like, he put them in. My talent died, my Raptor died. He managed to bring in his Death Knights, Black Knights, whatever, the super Deathwing Terminators basically. They dropped in, and I didn't realise, but they have a way to get a 7-inch charge. You know, that'd be something nice to have, wouldn't it? A 7-inch charge from Deep Strike. And he brought basically all of his Terminators out from his defensive position, and he deep struck in the back, and this was my critical mistake. I didn't screen one of my flanks. I was trying to get over there, but I couldn't get over there fast enough. I'd realised it had turned too late, because he deep struck in, I want to say round 3, because I pulled my Land Raider out, and it was a tactical error on my part. So he had a pocket to deep strike, and he got into my Land Raider, my Leviathan, both my Contemptors, and my Drill. So, you know, I got my Berserkers out. I mean, I cleaned up some of his Terminators, but once I'm in combat with him, because of the transhuman, like, my melter shots just weren't doing enough. The Volkite just wasn't hitting anymore, because the Lords had been killed, so they weren't getting the rerolls, hitting on 4s. Yeah, that was it. Once he got me locked, he did exactly the right thing. He played it perfectly. I could no longer score, so then he was able to use his like extra sort of like bodies here and there to move around, grab the objective, score his secondaries, and just pick me off one by one. And then those Deathwing, I want to say they're the Black Knights. They are brutal. The damage output, the resilience, the litanies or whatever it is that the chaplain can put out to just buff them. It's. So anyway, that game ended 57-46. I think we made it to round 5. We didn't time out, but I just can't remember if I called, like if I said, you know, this is over in round 4 or whatever. Absolute phenomenal game, and like I said, it's the only game I feel I made a genuine mistake by giving him one of my flanks, and I should have. I even knew in my head I needed to protect it to screen out that deep strike, and I didn't. The nails bit, and I just got hungry, and I sent all my, melee focus, my Leviathan and my Drill up into combat, and yeah, just FYI, Leviathans don't do too well into Deathwing Terminators, unfortunately. But anyway, okay, so that was round 3, so that was the end of the day. Even though I'd gone 0 for 3, I didn't feel bad. Every game had been fun. I felt I'd played well in every game, even with that kind of critical mistake. I felt I had a win in every game. I felt there was a chance for me to win every game. Not based on luck, maybe one decision here or there. I think I could have got wins. I didn't deserve wins, but I think on a better day, maybe whatever, if that little X factor had hit, maybe I could have got those wins. I didn't feel stomped, even though the second game was quite a big disparity in points. I don't feel that I was curb stomped in any of those games, so I didn't actually feel bad. I was exhausted, but I didn't feel bad, not like at my previous RTT. So I got some sleep. And then round 4 the next day, early morning again. This was on Scorched Earth, and this was against the Grey Knights. Gary was my opponent, and he ended up coming 5th overall. I want to say he was the top Imperium player as well. I was pretty scared about this. Haven't played Grey Knights. Only ever played them once, and that was in 8th edition. That was in like a fluffy game. So yeah, I heard the horror stories, and yep, wasn't looking forward. But I did have my anti-psyker tactic lined up, the 30 blob occultists, which at this game I just decided not to use because I'm going to touch on this more, as the 30 cultists are exceptional, but not in a timed game. And I'll talk about that a bit more at the end. So I just used my cultists to sit on one of the objectives and actually string out to hold 2 objectives for the majority of the game. This game was cagey as hell. We were both hiding behind our obscuring terrain. Of course, this game and the next game were on the Type 1 GW stuff. I'll have it on the screen over here. We hid our shooting units, and my opponent Gary, I believe, was the first to kind of really break out because I went second, and so I obviously had the opportunity to bring in reserves first, kind of pick where I wanted to go. So once I'd done that, he brought out one of his Dread Knights, and he got a bit unlucky, I believe, with his shooting. But again, my list has got, like, the main vehicles are either T8 or the Leviathan, which will be probably the next target after, or the next priority after them. You know, it's reducing damage by 1, it's popping smoke, it's, you know, quite resilient as well. And he had, you know, I think his weapons were damaged too, so I was reducing them on my Contemptors, whatever. He got a bit unlucky, and then I got very lucky. I killed a Dread Knight turn 1. With the Warp Talons got the first kill in every round of the game. There was let me go aside here. There was this great thing. You got a purity seal for these certain actions you did, like in the game. Like if you got the first kill of the round, you had to yell your faction's tagline. So I'd of course yell "Blood for the Blood God." If you tabled your opponent, I think you yelled. There was like 5 or 6 different things. If you did, you yelled out your quote, and they'd bring you a purity seal. I'm pretty sure I got the first kill in every round, but only remembered to yell 3 of the 5 times. But every round my Warp Talons frenzied and killed a target. So I'm fairly confident I got the first kill every round. But yeah, I killed a Dread Knight turn 1. I think that shook him a bit. But, you know, of course, he just picked up those Warp Talons almost immediately afterwards. And then we played a pretty cagey game. But he eventually came out, got a bit unlucky. My Volkites came out, removed another Dread Knight. It was very back and forth, a very close game. And this one ended 90 to 81, so this was less than 10-point differential. This was 9 points in it to the end of round 5. I took Engage, Rod, and Abhor the Witch. Of course, I maxed out Abhor. I got 8 points on Rod, maxed out primaries, I believe, and Engage, whatever the difference is there. This one I really enjoyed. I think the game versus the Deathwing was probably the most fun, but I think this was my most tactically exciting game. Great opponent, we both were trying to see who was going to break first, and it was close. And I'm going to be honest, this was another one I think I had a win in. I made a small mistake, which I only figured out in hindsight. I didn't Tide of Traitors my cultists in round 4 because they were, sandbagging or holding down a squad of his paladins or interceptors or whatever the heck they are, Grey Knight dudes with swords and halberds and stuff. Because I had started off with 30, they was down to about 12 or 13 at this point. I was hoping they could just hold on for one more round so I could have the 2 CP to tide them in round 5 and get my last rod. If I'd done it in round 4, I would have rodded, and then round 5 I could have moved and stolen an objective from him, which he probably wouldn't have been able to claim back because there would be 30 cultists there, and no matter what, he didn't have enough to kill all of them and outnumber me on the objective at the same time. So I may have actually won the game, maybe. But here's my advice about Great Knights. They are tough, they are very tough, but they are beatable. The problems, and my opponent actually explained it to me and it makes sense, the problems with Grey Knights are they have a secondary where they almost guaranteed to max out in about 3 rounds because they just pop off psychic actions, which they can do a psychic action and still shoot and charge and fight, which is horrible. And I think that could be FAQ'd, to be quite honest, because it just makes you're getting 3 points, especially on maps that have multiple objectives on your home side. And the second thing is they have an ability to stack a bunch of psychic powers on the character, on one character. I don't know if my opponent did that, or if it did, it didn't come off, because it was actually quite a ranged game for the majority of it. But they are beatable. And this guy, like I said, came 5th, and I believe was the best Imperium. And I want to say there were 3, maybe 4 Grey Knight players there, so he was the top Grey Knight player for sure. And it was that close with a World Eaters army that was not memey, but a bit of a meme. I had a Land Raider in there, right? It was that close. One of my favourite tactical games I've ever played. And I was very happy. Even losing, I was like, man, that was a feel-good game, right? So it did take me into round 5. I'm probably bottom of the table at this point, or certainly in the bottom, other than the guys that dropped. And I was like, you know what, we're going to have some fun. We're going to have a good one. So I ended up playing Tyler Mistrilli. And if you are watching, Tyler, I apologise for butchering your name. I think everybody did at the tournament there. But this was Tyler's first tournament ever, and he was bringing Salamanders, and we were fighting on Overrun. Great guy. Still a bit new to the game, so kind of helped him out a bit. I mean, there was a couple of things where I had to say, I can't really do that, like, not in a, hopefully it didn't come across in a dick way, because we was chatting for quite a while afterwards. Like, you can't move vehicles through ruins and stuff because of breachable and whatnot. Played really well, and oh my god, I forgot about the Salamanders Overwatch, right? I made a critical error. I made a complete noob mistake, and I put my Warp Talons on the closer side, on the inside of ruins after their frenzy, and declared a charge. It's like, oh, okay, you sure? Yeah. Okay, overwatching with 5 or 6 aggressors. Oh yeah, I knew. And I was like, no, that's my mistake. It was in my head, and I didn't do it. So he was like, okay. So he rolled, I think, got like 55 auto hits and stuff, and somehow he didn't kill me. I was like, dude, I mean, they were 0 AP, they're like bolt guns, right? So I still had the benefit of light cover, luckily being in the ruin. But it did take out 5 of my Talons. So where I'd originally declared a charge against his, the Melter guys, Eradicators, I think, and the Apothecary, because I'd taken Assassinate in this one, Banners, Engage, and Assassinate. This is on Overrun, if I didn't say. I charged into both as I had to do, but then I only put my attacks into the Apothecary just to get those Assassinate points at that point. And somehow his Eradicators, I took out the Apothecary, somehow his Eradicators didn't kill my Warp Talons. So they stayed there, and they just tied up the Eradicators for a turn and kind of blocked his infantry, which was behind him, which was pretty gross. So it should have gone better for me, but I didn't suffer. It was fine, and I felt kind of bad for him, like, as you know, I lucked out. I got lucky on that, and I didn't deserve it because I misplayed, but sometimes that will happen. It was a really fun game, but after that, because I managed to keep that sort of tactical lockdown on his units, it meant his Eradicators couldn't be effective on the next turn, so I was a bit freer to bring out my Dreadnoughts and Land Raider, and I was just picking off units. And I think what basically won me the game was, I'd emphasised at the start before we'd really got in, and I always bring this up in all my games, I will probably be deep striking my drill. It's very good in combat, it's very good in shooting, and it's got 10 berserkers inside it, which you do not want in combat with you, because that's the truth. But I think because he's maybe a bit more inexperienced, and he knew what berserkers could do, and I was like pointing them out that these guys will eat your guys for breakfast, he screened out his entire back, which was fine. The way this map is set up, I wanted my drill to come in the middle behind one of those ruins, because then he'd either have to, because he had a very infantry heavy army, he'd either have to charge me with infantry, which my drill has no problem with, because then berserkers get out and get a free charge, like when on my next turn, or the berserkers would get out and have, you know, free movement into his objectives, and it worked. So he screened out his flanks, and my drill came down exactly where I wanted it to. Even had line of sight on an ATV, which it popped with the melter. Berserkers got out next turn and cleaned up one of his flanks, and it was over at that point, because by then, this was a hold 2, hold 3, he could no longer score any primary points, and I'd maxed out or very close to. Then I just, you know, my banner's maxed out. I maxed out my rod. I think I only got 3 rods because, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. I won 89 to 33. So maybe it was engage points I dropped. I'm not entirely sure. Oh no, I didn't rod. That's why I didn't max it out, because I took banners. Assassinate, I couldn't kill. We had 4 characters. I killed all of them except a lieutenant who wasn't the warlord. So I dropped 3 there. And obviously, I'm not sure, must have been engage points where I dropped then. So that was another really fun game. It was a good win. It just snowballed very quickly, even though it shouldn't have. My warp talent should have died to Overwatch because I misplayed. If I was thinking better, I would have obviously added an inch to my charge, but charged from behind because I was aware of that stratagem. It is what it is. I got the win. Opponent played great. He'd won his previous game, so we both left with a win, which, you know, that was good. But okay, let me start wrapping this up. I do want to touch on some takeaway points. You know, this is obviously specifically for my list and based on previous advice I've given regarding how I build my list and stuff, right? First of all, the Achilles was actually great. I was skeptical of it. I was a bit worried because I've talked about before, I ran 2 of them in 8th edition competitively, and with Khorne they were absolutely broken because they had a 4-up invuln. They were very hard to shift in 8th edition. I'd run 2 of them and 2 whirlwind scorpiuses with Khorne sitting right between them. They just mowed down everything. I mean, it wasn't a you know, GT winning list, but I, you know, did well at a couple RTTs and stuff like that. It is still overcosted though, about 40 points. The Volkite variant, which is 50 points cheaper, I believe, is good, but Contemptors is still a better platform for your Volkite, quite frankly. There is probably a list out there which can run the Achilles, but I do think if it dropped 50 points with the melter shots, it would be competitive. It would be, especially for armies that rely on transports. Even with, I know people don't like the 6 transport capacity, but that's a character and a squad of 5 Marines or 5 Berserkers if you want to push it up aggressively, which I don't recommend. It sits nicely, you know, touching one of your objectives and just threatening a flank or threatening the center with 8 melter shots, and, you know, it's gun on top. So it's not a terrible unit. I know people are seeming to prefer the Proteus version, which can be even more defensive, sitting back, and has better transport capacity. But see, to me, that's a kind of dichotomy because it wants to transport stuff, but it's got las cannons, which make you want to stay back. The Achilles is a perfect mid-table threat. Anything that comes within 24 inches is going to die, and you can have something inside it which will come up and follow up with a charge phase. You know, like if you've got berserkers in there, they're going to pop out, and if you didn't kill it with melter, you're going to kill it with chain axes, right? So the second thing, the 30 cultists, which are, you know, I even did a video on this, right? And I know a few folks in the Discord are testing it out and stuff. I know even Dara is running cultists. I think he's running a 20 and a 10 or a 15 and a 10 at the moment. So the 30 cultists are awesome, absolutely awesome, competitive as fuck. The problem is you will not want to take them to a competition because 30 25mm bases that you've got to manage to keep coherent for their strategic play, which is frenzying them up the board and move blocking, is too time consuming. My first game against the Iron Hands, I actually timed out. I couldn't do anything except roll my saves, I believe, in round 4 and 5. If I'd had my cultists as 2 squads of 15 and just kept one back and, you know, maybe sent one forward, I may have won that game. I honestly, because I played that game with 2 turns non-interactivity, because I timed out, because I used cultists and I pushed them up the board and I made sure they was all where they were supposed to be, and that was my mistake. So I've actually changed it. I think I'm going to run 2 squads of 20 now, and they're just going to sit on objectives and be 20 wounds. Nope, I'm not running 2 squads of 20. Sorry, I'm running a squad of 20 and 2 squads of 10, and the 10s are going to be inside rhinos. So having a blob of wounds, which is a nice target for a tide of traitors, as a fallback for your rod or capturing an objective late game is good. And then cultists and rhinos, I genuinely believe is also strong. Go ahead and shoot them. You're shooting that T7 model, and then the models inside with OBSEC, you're not shooting my dreadnoughts, right? So that's kind of my philosophy there. So it's great if you only play on TTS, use 30 cultists. If you're playing in real life under time conditions, don't play 30 cultists. They are very, very strong, but they will eat your time far too much that you need to be devoting to other things. Warp Talons are exceptional. Complete convert. I'm very skeptical start of 9th edition, or when we lost Nihilus, whatever it was, Imperium, the good Warp Talons, right? The 6-inch charge Warp Talons. Once we lost them, I was not a fan, and then obviously Mark took them to the ACO and did real well with them, and then everyone basically is running them now. Even Dara, who absolutely hated them, is loving them. They're good. The frenzy makes them very good. The abundance of Imperium players makes them good because of the strats we can throw on top. And I've been running 8, and this tournament taught me I need 10. 8 sometimes will not quite be enough, i.e. versus that Contemptor Dreadnought. I didn't even roll that badly, maybe a little bit under average, but if I'd had the extra 2, that would have saved me 3 CP. Or I would have been more tempted to do a multi-charge, and the 3 CP may have been necessary then, but I would have taken out an extra unit, right? So I'm going 10. My list right now is running 10 of them, and I'm excited to try that out. The only problem with this is, and it's not going second, I don't think that's a problem. I think you just hide them defensively and use them as a counter strike, because who wants to come in range of that? But you've got to come in range of that. The problem is sometimes opponents don't have a good target you can reach turn 1. And do you really want to send them in just to clear a squad of tactical marines? No, you don't. So I think then it's just more about fine-tuning your own playstyle, making sure your target priority is good, and you frenzy them no matter what. But if there ends up not being a target, or they do a redeploy or something like that, you just throw them somewhere where they're in a nice counter-offensive position, hopefully with some light cover or completely obscured or whatever you need to give them. Hell, bring them back and use them as a late game charge, whatever. I've played them and brought them in and rodded with them turn 1 before, just so they don't get shot off the board. It feels like a wasted CP, but you also force your opponent to make a tactical decision based on the fact that you can throw 51 attacks with rerolls out the ass at them turn 1. So the closing thought here, because I do need to finish this. The closing thought, like I said, I won 1 game and I lost 4. But I want to say those are the 5 best games of 40k from a tactical perspective that I've ever played. The actual win was probably the luckiest I was, and I certainly didn't deserve as much of a big win. I think I deserved a win. I think I did play well, but I got very lucky in that with those Warp Talons. I made a mistake. The other 4 games, I believe I had a win in them to different degrees. But aside from the misplay by giving up a flank against the Deathwing, the other games, I don't think I really did anything wrong. The first game I lost, this is outside of my opponents being better players. Please don't take me as being salty here or anything. My first game I lost because I didn't have the time on the clock to win. I didn't. My cultists consumed too much of my game, and that is the problem. That doesn't mean I'm that doesn't mean I didn't deserve to win or anything. It just means my list wasn't constructed optimally, and I didn't deserve the win because of that stage of the game. The pre-game thing is what lost me the game there, by building a list that wasn't efficient with its time management in a timed game. So that is on me. But I think had I been 3 squads of 10 there, I may have had that win. I honestly think I could have won that game, like all of them. I really am so happy with how I played, and thinking back how I started playing the game. Anyone who remembers where I did the 10 charity games on TTS versus people on Instagram and stuff, some of which are on YouTube, like, I'm all over the place. My deployment is whack. I'm making poor target priority choices, and that's 3-4 months ago. And these games, I'm like feeling like I got fucking Napoleon sitting on my shoulder saying, you know, do this, do that. I was very happy. I had great experience, and I'm actually happy with my growth. Even though I lost 4 games, I feel I scored well in those games, and I just happened to lose to better players, and that's going to happen. The next one is in March. I'm very hopeful. I'm not confident. I'm hoping we have a codex before then, because if I can rock up to that place with a codex, and if that codex drops, you know, mid-February, before people have got time to jump on the World Eaters bandwagon or something, I'm looking for a top 5 with a codex. I'm looking for a top 5 at a GT, the first GT I go to. I'm not even joking. That's what my goal is. If we get a codex that is in any way competitive, above Necrons, if we're around Death Guard level, I'll take it, because the model availability I've got, the experience, you know, myself and most of you people watching have got playing games with these guys, we're going to do some work. I'm telling you, as close as I could take it against a very skillful Grey Knights player, as close as I could take it against a very skillful Iron Hands or Deathwing player, or, you know, being able to do well against the Salamanders or the Raven God, whatever, we can get them, boys. We can. But yeah, all right, I'm going to cut this one off here because I've rambled a bit too long, I think. But if you're still here, thanks for watching. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and kill main bear.